So I was on Facebook yesterday and saw a post from a friend, Tori and Leroy, about one of their favorite COVID pastimes, which is reading Amazon reviews. And I'd never thought to do this as like a fun thing. I mean, I've seen some good ones, but the ones they were really enjoying were of the Haribo sugar-free gummy bears.
I've read these. I love this.
Apparently, they double as laxatives, essentially. And
I think that's a nice way to put it, based on the reviews.
Yes. There is gastrointestinal involvement, and it can be quite the doozy. It's quite painful and seems to be pretty prolonged in terms of duration. And so one of the commenters mentioned that there is a podcast that did a whole episode of this, and the podcast is called Beach Too Sandy, Water Too Wet. And their whole shtick is just very dramatically reading reviews of things. And so each week they choose like a theme, and they did a special episode just on these gummy bears that Tareen and I listened to as we were going to bed last night and cracked up at, because there's like music playing as they're reading. It's like this ominous music about what comes next. And one of the things that we found inexplicably hilarious was the guy who had 4 of these gummy bears while on a plane and said, I only had 4, but apparently it was 4 too many. And Tareen and I have been saying that to each other all day. I only had 4, but apparently it was 4 too many.
Wait, these are still available for purchase and consumption?
They are still available for purchase and consumption, and someone said that they used it in place of a laxative, although they wish they hadn't, because it's a lot more painful.
Yeah, I hear it's like really traumatic.
Why?
It's something to do with the sugar-free, like sugar substitute. It must be.
Yeah.
Does anybody know, like,
sugar-free?
Does anybody have any personal experience with these?
I don't, but I think that's what happens, right? So somebody writes these reviews, and then other people are like, it can't be that bad, because I even found myself saying, like, they're gummy bears. How bad could it be? And then I was like, this is how you get caught. It's exactly that thinking that leads you down this path.
We're going to order some with some Voices Patreon money.
Oh.
Yeah, we'll do that episode.
See what happens.
We'll all like chow down on 10 of them and then just start rolling and see how it goes.
What will happen?
Oh, a real-time episode. Okay.
This will be the episode where it's Skylar like, hey guys, sorry, we don't have an episode this week.
Definitely. We've come close a few times, but that will be it. That will be the one.
That'll be it. Sorry guys, we don't have an episode this week. We tried the gummy bears. We made it about 10 minutes in, and then one by one we all started to lose it.
Well, I guess before I have too many claws, let's get started with this one.
All right.
Let's do it.
Sounds like a plan.
Voices, the things they said. Voices, some from those dead. All the voices heard. Voices, things we say. Voices, they're in your head. All the voices heard.
Hello, everyone. You have Kempa.
And Skylar.
And Flo. No
And
Shannon
so,
today.
yeah, you can hear this hole in all of our hearts, and in our intros. We have no Shannon today. Another gallbladder attack, and again, she can't get it removed until she's got a fever, basically.
Yeah, they told her October is like when they can get her in or something. This is absolutely ridiculous. I feel so bad for her. It must be really frustrating.
And if you look at just the COVID numbers in our state right now, I think October is a very generous guess.
Well, yeah.
It just sucks. So get well, Shannon. We miss you. We love you. And we'll do the best we can about you.
Yeah, we're going to try.
So we are today covering more or less Trump's sort of fascist move, right? With these kind of unmarked Stasi-esque troops coming into Portland. I think we didn't cover this before because it's a more national level story, but more locally, they've been discussing this here in the state of California. But effectively, during the protests out there in Portland in the last couple of weeks, Trump sent out, what was it, 200 or so, 150 or so of these unmarked kind of like, I guess you'd call them troops. Nobody really knew what they were for a few days, and they were just like picking up people wearing black, accusing them of being Antifa, and not saying who they were, and just like
blackbagging them.
Yeah.
Yep.
And like also not like charging them with anything.
Right.
And so like no habeas corpus, none of that. It's just you are now ours. And it turned out these are DHS and ICE folks mostly. But as we're seeing, obviously it's escalating higher and higher, right? Have you been paying attention to the protests out there?
Yes, a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll get into it as we go, but like honestly, like I hate when people are super hyperbolic when they talk about Trump and what he's doing and whatnot. I don't like it when he does like, whatever dumb, stupid shit that he's doing, but that people are like, oh, Trump's a Nazi or whatever. I'm kind of at a loss with this unmarked vans, just like black bagging people off the street. Like this, I don't know. Maybe it's me, and maybe it's because I don't know. Whatever it is, this feels different to me. This feels like an escalation to me. I guess all of this is to say that this story really scares me. And
as it should.
Yeah. I am more frightened by this than things that have happened before.
Yeah. I agree. I've kind of always said I really do feel as if it's kind of our duty to like not exaggerate, because the truth is so horrifying already. And not to get distracted. Like, I have a rule about not referring to Trump, based on his weight or his color or things like that,
Right.
because I just feel like there's so much to criticize that is real. And because I don't want to cry wolf over things that are problematic, but not, fascist, because then when we've always been calling it that, then when there's actually something that we should be really deeply concerned about, and that, is infringing upon rights, then people are like, well, you've been saying that for the last 4 years. And,
exactly.
It wasn't that, right? So I'm totally with you on that, Skylar. And I think what we're seeing here is quite interesting to me, because there's this pushback, right, that's happening among many of these mayors and many of these cities about, Trump sending folks in. But some of these cities were the same cities that just had the National Guard that they called in. So I don't know if it's really their pushback is about what's happening. I think their pushback is about who made the call.
Orange man bad.
Right.
I
it almost feels like
I don't think you're wrong.
You don't get to call them in. We get to call them in, and
Yeah.
we get to set the tone for how this happens. And that bothers me a lot as well, because then we're really just playing politics, and we're not actually playing principles. And I've just never enjoyed that.
Yeah, I've always considered him a fascist. I haven't considered everything that he's done fascist. I think he's very dopey and like silly and not good at anything he does. And I was hoping that would sort of protect us a little bit. But yeah, this is one of those moments when you're like, oh, I've read Fascism, that essay by Umberto Eco. Like this is Fascism 101. This is it right here. And
it is like, I think part of the thing that scares me too, is thinking about, and again, I fucking hate hyperbole for all the same reasons that Flo just listed. But like the only recent example we have of like a world power kind of being corrupted by blatant fascism is the Nazis in Germany. And according to my understanding of how that went, it wasn't like Hitler just kind of woke up one morning and was like, okay, we're all Nazis now, like fascism rules. He set things in place and set things in motion, and it was little things here and there, and then by the time people woke up and realized what was happening, it was too late. And this to me is just like if I'm reading about this moment in a history book, I'm like, no, we're on the they're on the precipice of something really major with this.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, let's keep going with the storyline. So out there in Portland, there were these demonstrations. Then he sent out these 150 sort of unidentified stormtroopers of his in these unmarked vans.
Yeah.
Rental
and they
vans.
Started like messing with, Enterprise, I think, messing with these.
Is this like Tiki Torch, where Enterprise is now like caught up in this, and they're
right
just,
now?
we I don't know. We just rented some vans. We didn't know what you're gonna do. Like Tiki Torch was like, we were just selling the outdoor things to keep your backyard lit and that have a little citronella in them. And now all of a sudden we're the face of like this white supremacist movement.
What are those? What's that shirt brand that all the Proud Boys wear?
Fred Perry.
Fred Perry. Yeah. So now nobody can wear Fred Perry anymore. And like, yeah.
My mom hit me up the other day and was like, your dad wants to go to the store, but he's wearing a Hawaiian shirt. Like, is that okay? Or do you think people will think he's a boogaloo?
Like, I don't know, Mom.
I love it.
I was like, just make sure he doesn't wear a tack vest over it, and he should be fine at Costco.
Yeah, he's fine. I'm not worried.
God.
I'm not worried about your dad.
So they came in about a week and a half ago, and obviously, as we all know, as when cops get involved, it's the same thing as with these fuckers. Once they show up, things escalate, right?
Yep.
And so they showed up, they escalated, and there have been some really messed up clips. I saw one where they shot a smoke canister, and you're supposed to shoot them at the ground in front of people. You shouldn't fucking do it at all, but you're supposed to shoot it at the ground, and then the smoke comes up. One of these fucking goons, this guy was like holding up a boombox over his head, and the goon just shot him in the forehead and fractured his skull.
I saw that.
And it was a very disturbing video. So that's escalated. Obviously, there have been injuries, but now the crowds are getting higher and higher, right? And we're seeing moms come out and stand in front of these young folks and like singing, and dads with leaf blowers, apparently.
Yeah, to blow away the gas.
Yeah,
they're using them to
I love it.
to clear the gas out.
Yeah, apparently the kids were doing that in Hong Kong, and it works really well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And right, so you're watching this turn into a much bigger thing that really is turning into much more than just demonstrators out there now, right? It's the entire community coming out against these monsters. Did you see the clip of Sacramento's own Black Zebra Productions?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't.
So they were out, was it last night? It was Wednesday night, I guess you would say.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Tuesday or
So
Wednesday.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And basically these DHS or ICE or whatever folks grabbed and kind of beat one of their production people, and it's all caught on film. He finally got away, but it's really just disturbing stuff. And like, again, kudos to Black Zebra for going out there and like, you know, time and again, they just put their bodies on the line to cover this stuff. But yeah, so they've been obviously targeting press as well, which is the case. And again, you know, when we talk about
that's another fascist thing, by the way, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all the same playbook, right? So let's talk about now. Then he started being like, oh, I'm going to send this out to other cities, right?
Right.
One of the cities he kept talking about was Oakland. And hearing that, Skylar and I, you talked about this the other day. I was like, I don't know if they want to fuck with Oakland, man.
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna fuck around and find out in Oakland. That's
like Oakland goes hard. I remember during Occupy, years and years ago, back when we were like just like all these young people, just like something's wrong, but we don't have the language for it. I was at Occupy Wall Street, but I remember Occupy Oakland just like went really fucking hard, and like everyone in the movement was just like, oh shit, like okay. So I can only imagine in a climate like 2020, how the people of Oakland and the demonstrators out there would welcome these sort of folks. But in California, this hasn't happened yet, right? He hasn't.
I'm kind of surprised given his like, I don't know, the way that he talks about the cities that he wants to send these people to, that they're not in California yet, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, me too. Yeah. So he is. Why don't we start with like California pushing back first, right? So our very own mayor and our very own city council member, so Mayor Steinberg and Jay Schenirer, the council member, have both outright said, we do not want them here. Let's make sure this doesn't fucking happen. The mayor signed on to a letter of 15 mayors across the country, strongly worded, saying basically like, we don't want them. None of this is okay. And we will fight back if right, not physically probably, but if you do try to send people to our cities.
But here's the thing, Dave. The paragraph that stood out to me, and I think we should read it, that just seems ridiculous in the face of many of these cities calling in the National Guard is, we are a nation of laws and fundamental constitutional guarantees. The murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis sparked a national uprising and reckoning. Millions have joined protests and exercised their constitutional rights. The majority of the protests have been peaceful and aimed at improving our communities. Where this is not the case, it still does not justify the use of federal forces. So then why were federal forces used? Because the National Guard qualifies as a federal force.
I believe
here and in LA. Yeah,
them
but
outside my
Garcetti's on this
fucking
letter,
door.
right?
Absolutely. And then the next sentence goes on to say, unilaterally deploying these paramilitary type forces into our cities is wholly inconsistent with our system of democracy and our most basic values.
Interesting, Darrell.
That's what I'm like, am I in the Twilight Zone? Like, how do you sign your name to this without going, is that egg on my face? Like, how do you do that and not simultaneously issue an apology for having done the very same thing before Trump?
Right.
And it's not just Mayor Steinberg. Mayor Garcetti's on there from LA.
Of course.
They had twice as many National Guard troops in their city as we did at the beginning of June. And they don't.
I feel like Darrell, he really just wants everybody to like forget that he did that. Because like, I mean, the whole thing with like the strong mayor stuff, I think basically everything he's been trying to do is like, dude, at least wait a month after you like bring the National Guard in and make us all stay in our houses. Like a month, just a month. Like let that much time go past before you start. I mean, and then to like criticize people for like bringing in federal soldiers to deal with peaceful protesters. It's
yeah,
like,
man, we agree.
This is exactly why people are critical of like when, Democrats get on our high horse about like, oh, the Trump administration is so bad. It's like, kids were being locked up under Obama. We just weren't talking about it, right? Like, it's one of those things where if we're going to be consistent about what our values are, we also have to hold Democrats accountable for what they do. It's not just bad because people associated with the color red are doing it.
Yes.
It's bad because it's bad, period.
Do
End
it.
of statement.
Yes.
That's it. Like, it's bad. And so how are you going to sign onto a letter with that paragraph knowing you just did the exact same thing a month and a half ago?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Also signing on to this letter was the mayor of, I want to say San Jose.
Mm-hmm.
And then also Mayor Libby Schaaf
from Oakland. Who recently went against her council, who wanted to do, to scale back on their police and
put it towards social
and is a
services.
Strong mayor, yes,
Yeah.
and is a strong mayor, and vetoed it.
Oh, she is a strong mayor, so she has the deal that Steinberg's pushing for.
Yep.
Oh.
Okay.
Funny. And she put a stop to this progress with her strong mayor position. That's interesting to know.
Yeah.
Right. And so, you know, yes, it's good for you to fight. You know, yes, we know that none of the Democrats like having a Cheeto in the White House, as they say, but it's also a little frustrating to hear these words coming out of their mouths after what happened 7 weeks ago in our own fucking town, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We were sitting here like, just a month ago doing the podcast, and I was like watching a military checkpoint like 100 feet away from where I live, like while looking out the window while we're doing the show, watching the shit, and just like, God damn it.
Yeah. I remember recording with you all and just thunderous, just flashbangs and gunshots and shit, or well, maybe just like less than lethal projectiles, right?
Shit sounds shit's loud though. Yeah.
But no, I mean, out here too, we saw just absolute violence against demonstrators.
Yes.
And we saw one person get hit by I believe it was a gas canister and like 7 rubber bullets. There was
they shot a child through the face outside the jail.
They shot a teen through the face. Yeah.
A young teen.
Yep.
That was a sheriff's deputy. I remember that. And then also a legal observer who, similar to a journalist, is a third-party observer and should not be fucked with by anyone on any side. Got shot as well and got really messed up over it.
They hit him in the head with a non-lethal round, right?
I believe so. Yeah. And I remember the images online. It's messed up, and it's somebody that it's really there, someone there doing a service, right? A community service,
right?
And this was brought in by our mayor and agreed upon by our mayor, and not just our Democratic mayor and city council, but also our Democratic governor. So how much better are these people? I really don't. Sometimes I have trouble drawing a line here. They give different reasons for doing the similar actions.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's the part that just doesn't make sense to me and is really inconsistent. And so I'm really frustrated because I just feel like this is like, I'm not saying I'm not opposed to this. Obviously, this is horrifying. I'm just saying it takes pretty big balls to like just come out
sign on to this letter
without it also accompanying an apology for like, I know we did this a month and a half ago. I now realize the error of my ways and don't want to see it happen again, right? Like that should be the tenor of this letter for many of the signatories. And so it's concerning to me that they're saying it as if they have completely clean hands and nothing to account for here.
Right. It's this righteous anger tone that they bring. We are the pure ones. We will stand against you and, these troops you've brought into our cities. And it's like,
and we've been consistent about this the whole time.
Right.
Come on.
I mean, one of the differences between the National Guard and like something that, is happening in Portland is that these guys aren't identifying themselves. That makes it, I kind of can't believe that it's operating in the way that it is, because the feds in Portland are not wearing anything or like holding anything that you can't just like go on Amazon and buy, right? So like basically people are just being abducted into vans they're not being charged. The people are not identifying themselves. So there's really no reason for you to think, if you're getting black bagged, that this is like a government operation and not just like three boogaloo dudes.
Exactly. A gang of white supremacists.
Exactly.
Who
would do this shit.
People this was in Portland, right? Where 2 guys got shot just off of that little free zone thing that they had going there, supposedly by white supremacists, right? So why should you trust that whoever is spiriting you away is somebody,
is a government official?
And I want to connect this to something that's also happened locally, right? Which is this idea that was discussed even on Tuesday at the city council meeting about whether or not police officers should be required to announce themselves before they do things. And I'm just like, there are so many. I'm hoping that the American for Disabilities, right, like take up some of these causes, because there is the issue of like, as people who I know the three of us travel, right? Like I've been in other places. If somebody yelled something to me in a language I don't speak, I wouldn't know what they were saying to me, right? And that they were even talking to me. There are sometimes where people yell things at me and I didn't understand them, and they're yelling at me in English. So I can just only imagine like how confusing it is to have somebody coming at you and you're not entirely sure what's happening, and your natural inclination is to defend yourself. And so it feels always
fight or flight, right?
Right, that we live in a country where we are willing to defend our stand your ground laws and say that no matter what, if somebody comes on your property, you can shoot them. But then we turn around and say that the police don't have to identify themselves when they're going after people, and when they can show up, not necessarily identified as even police officers, and not saying who they are or what they want you to do. Like, that's incredibly confusing and inconsistent in terms of just a level of policy that we have where both of those things can exist at the same time. I don't get it.
Yeah. And a reminder that the cops that killed Stephon Clark in 2018 in his grandma's backyard never identified themselves as
Never
police.
did.
They just shot him.
Right.
We also never drug tested them afterward, which was another thing that came up as a big thing on Tuesday.
Yep.
I know Councilmember Warren thankfully took that up and said, this sounds reasonable to me that we should be doing this when someone has used lethal force. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's rampant. Certainly HGH and rage, type stuff is rampant in the prison guard community. I don't think it's that different in the police community. So I think it's a great idea to at the very least do that. And who knows what else you'll find in their system after they kill someone. Yeah, that's totally true. And just we should add that I believe it was earlier this week, another young man was shot and killed by police. Obviously, the cops are doing their propaganda spin. They're claiming he had a gun, blah, blah, blah. But
and that he drew on him, right?
And that he drew on them. But we have to wait for the video to come out. Just like with Stephon Clark, they're fucking liars. They're fucking liars.
Right.
They said Clark had a weapon. Then they said
a toolbar.
A toolbar, which isn't a thing.
I don't know what a toolbar is.
Nobody knows what a toolbar is.
Define that for me. Is that a crowbar? Is that a toolbox? Is this a portmanteau kind of thing? Could somebody explain this to me?
A toolbar.
I mean, English is hard. So
yeah, maybe it is a portmanteau. It's like it's a crowbar connected to a toolbox or something.
Okay, because I've never, to this day, no one's been able to explain that to me. I checked Urban Dictionary. It's not there. So
I don't know what it is, but if you have it, they will consider you a threat.
Yeah, they'll fucking kill you over that shit.
So this is like porn, also really unclear definitions.
I don't know.
We know it when we see it, right?
Yeah, I can't say it, but I know it when I see it.
Okay, all right.
A classic Supreme Court moment.
Just checking. Okay, all right.
No, yeah, and so I guess let's talk about sort of how it's spreading now, right? So Trump has decided to try and spread this to other cities. He is sort of testing it out, a little beta test, beta fascism in Albuquerque, of all places, Kansas City, and Chicago. And the interesting one to me is Chicago, where the mayor, what's her name, Lori Lightfoot?
Yeah.
Is wholeheartedly welcoming him and these goons in.
Real quick, to go back to something that you said, I kind of want to address it because I've seen people saying it, and I think it's true that like this is not a test run for what he's doing. I think the test run was what ICE has been doing to immigrants for like basically ever since Donald Trump got elected. Like that was the test. This is the rollout. Like what we're seeing now, Yeah,
let's discuss that a little bit. People are so appalled today by what's happening, and folks have pointed out rightly that this is our foreign policy coming home to roost. This is how we treat people in other countries.
Right.
brown people in other countries specifically regularly. And now we are applying the same extrajudicial enforcement on our own people. So after 9/11, they passed the Patriot Act, which really gives the government just a broad view to kind of do whatever they want and just claim that it's in the name of the fight against terror.
Yep.
And Edward Snowden showed us that they're able to, they can watch our show in real time as we're doing it, right? They can see everything you're doing if you have an electronic effectively. And then on top of that, yes, they will detain people indefinitely and
not charging us anything.
And again, this is also reinforced under Obama. He passed a law in 2011 saying that it's okay to hold people without charging them with anything indefinitely. So no habeas corpus protection for anyone. And if they don't get it out there, why do you think we are going to be afforded it once we have a fascist president?
And that's what I mean by, really drawing attention to the fact that some of these policies are bipartisan policies.
Right.
So it really is inappropriate to get all up on your high horse about it. I mean, certainly if you just found out about it, you can be outraged. But to only be outraged at the Trump administration is disingenuous. The thing that stood out to me when the cities were being named was that as he was naming the places where he wanted to go, they were cities that had like pretty large brown populations, right? Whether they were Latino or Black, they are cities that have, Albuquerque is over 50% Black and Latino, with the majority being Latino, right? Like even Kansas City is over 30% Black. I'm looking at this and I'm like, this feels by design. Like, why not just say we're going for Detroit, Atlanta, and because that's really what you're saying is that you're willing to deploy this largely in cities that have populations that are largely Black and brown.
Yeah.
Right. Well, he's got like a real hard on for like, quote unquote liberal stronghold cities.
Absolutely. Right? And so he also has some of those, but it was like, as he was talking about where he was coming next, I was just like, oh, so you just are generally trying to terrorize places that you see as either liberal strongholds and or often the two go hand in hand.
Right. I was going to say that
larger brown population. Exactly. Right.
That Venn diagram's pretty much of a circle, I think.
Yeah, it makes sense. That totally makes sense too, I guess, why those cities. He's naming it some sort of operation that's named after a
legend, I think, right? Is that right?
It's named after a 5-year-old boy who was shot in his own home. It was in, what city was that in? It was in Kansas City?
I think so.
So that, that could be a portion of why he's trying to justify Kansas City, right? Basically, they'll take a random act of violence and be like, this is why your city's out of control and we're going to send in our troops now.
But we can have tons of school shootings and do nothing about it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right. But one off and now we need to send in troops. Okay.
Yeah.
I think it feels like part of it too is a reaction to like all the statues coming down all over the place and whatnot, and people like showing up at federal, like vandalizing federal buildings and whatnot. Like it does seem like a lash out against people who are trying to like decolonize their spaces, right? Because that's a lot of these cities are kind of in the middle of doing that. I don't know. I guess it's impossible to like try and find out like what exactly the motive is for this kind of thing.
I think it's all intertwined, though. I think you're correct. It's a culture war, right? And culture war it's always been a little bit of a dog whistle for, this battle to preserve, quote unquote, like whiteness, right? And like Trump is he's sort of just trying to really rile up his racist right-wing folks as again as part of a political ploy. He knows that he is totally floundering in the election. And I think he still has 1990s brain, where both parties had to be the tough on crime party, and he thinks that this will be his ticket to stay in the White House. I'm just not sure that's going to work this time around.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I really do still think Donald Trump is a two-term president. And
I know.
My cynical view is that America is gonna America. But I would hope to be wrong on that. So America, switch it up on me.
What are they gonna do? Yeah.
Some new tricks. I mean, I'm
what do you
here
expect
for
from
it.
them?
Yeah, I'm here for it. But I don't have a whole lot of hope on that. And, you know, I also think that given how unpopular he is, I think that there are people who will say one thing and then vote a different way when they're in the privacy of their own home /
Right.
ballot, box.
That was true
last
for the
time.
last election.
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't like to talk about how much they agree with Trump.
There are, so the stat folks have been sort of writing pieces lately saying, you know, even if there were some of those people, that didn't change the outcome of the election last time around. And also just, I don't know, man, like we're all very, very burned by 2016, right? Yeah. But the numbers,
not me,
the numbers against, well, I look forward to gloating on November 4th.
I look forward to you gloating too.
The numbers in a lot of these swing states are just like, it's like Trump is down in double digits in places like, you know, Pennsylvania and Florida, which is absurd. Even in, like, yes, there's a lot of time left, but like, I don't think I've ever seen anybody come back from that kind of thing 4 months out. And again, like, I'm burned from 2016. I'm like willing to.
Well, it's also like I would feel better about it and more secure about it if the Democrats would like try and run somebody worth voting for, but they won't do it. Where has Joe Biden been since all of this Portland stuff has been going on? If I could be wrong.
Biden doing stuff like, why is he intentionally sabotaging himself?
Right. I think the only thing that he's tweeted since the feds invaded Portland is he tweeted something about how much he likes ice cream on International Ice Cream Day or something.
Awesome.
Well, I mean, and I guess like if you're Joe, honestly, like it's extremely cynical, but if you're Joe Biden, probably your best strategy is to just shut your mouth and hide somewhere. I feel like that guy is always within like, I mean, he's like seconds away from just like firing off a racial slur at like on any given speech that he's giving. Like,
sure. And he's also like very recently said, you know, Trump is America's first racist president. And I'm like,
yes.
Did he say that? I didn't see that.
I'm like,
our first racist president?
I'm just like, just stop talking because it doesn't make sense and you're pissing off your base.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's like the person who somebody says yes and they keep trying to sell you on it, but it's getting worse and you're
Dude,
like,
I already said yes.
Maybe I don't want this car anymore. Like, yeah, you're pissing me off. Now I don't want the car. Like
yeah. So Schuyler, he said that Trump was the first racist president we've ever had, and that a lot of people racists have tried to be president, but they didn't do it. But Trump, he did.
And I guess he's thinking of Strom Thurmond because that's the only.
Yeah.
That's like the only.
like just like and like not even going all the way back to like fucking you know the like
George
racist
Wallace? I don't
like.
know.
But like and like but also like presidents that did president, right? Like not even like going back as far as like the ones that were slave owners or the ones that were like, you know, real xenophobic murderers like Andrew Jackson. Did he not listen to the Nixon tapes?
Right.
This was not long ago.
I mean, Joe, you were like alive, well, and an adult when that happened.
Joe Biden feels to me like he's trying to be ameliorative. He's trying to be like, you know, yes, I will usher you into a nicer time, but it feels more palliative. It feels like a nurse giving me morphine as I'm dying.
Yep.
He thinks I don't know. He just doesn't know what the fuck he's doing.
No. Well, and it is clear that their tactic with him is just to hide him away and like not let him say anything embarrassing or whatever, which is great. Great work, Democrats. Thanks for setting us up with this fucking guy.
Mm-hmm.
This feels great. I feel like any other, like really almost any other candidate from the primary would be like running circles around Trump right now. You know?
But also, even though he is like, we're totally Weekend at Bernie's in him, like he still is way ahead in the polls. So
yeah. I think honestly, like I think the coronavirus has a lot to do with that. I think like
100%.
Trump's mishandling of that.
No
has,
question.
like people aren't into it.
People's family members and friends are dying and they're connecting the dots. That's really how I see it. We're almost at 150,000 deaths in our country and 4 million cases. Like it's not going away anytime soon. No. And the buck stops with him.
Yeah. Man, I wish we had a better candidate than Joe Biden, man. I really wish we did. I mean, I definitely like, I don't know. Like, obviously, I would rather see him win than lose, but I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I always try to see a little, you know, silver lining or whatever. I'm going to start with a negative point, though. You know, today we just saw a bunch of Democrats vote to increase military spending. Because that's what this country does. We're fucking blind, bloodthirsty fucking hawks. And while they voted for that, we are going to have, you know, people's lifelines in our country cut off, and we're not going to be able to give them the money that will allow them to pay rent. So this is where our Democrats and our Republicans' priorities are.
Yep.
And we really need to let people know about that.
Yeah, voting blue is not enough. It's not enough.
No.
You can't just stop there.
Vote the good kind of red. You know, it's good to see Democratic socialists end up in our city council right now. You look out in New York State, and NYC DSA has gotten 5 Democratic socialists into their state legislature, plus Julia Salazar, who was reelected. Like, these aren't just like token wins anymore.
Well, and they're killing it in their races, right? Didn't Ilhan Omar like dominated her race, didn't she?
She hasn't done a race yet.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So, yeah. And Omar, I don't think Omar is in DSA, but she's like left of.
She's in the squad.
She's the best one of the squad too. Yeah. So it's like, but she's got this like weird no-name guy running against her, and he just in the last quarter got like $3 million from all of these weird opaque places, and he has these shadow companies running his campaign. It's very, very weird. I mean, it's obviously just Republicans and right-wing Democrats that are afraid of Ilhan. Yep. And she'll probably win, hopefully.
Right.
Listeners, like, do everything you can, phone bank, give money if you can. Ilhan is probably the most important leftist in the country right now.
Yeah.
I feel like I was going somewhere with this, but
we were talking about races and who was expected to win, and shifting away from basically the sort of status quo of how we'd all and like the expectations of that.
Yeah, I guess all I was saying is, you know, it's important that we know that, like, people know that folks like them, you know, these folks like Ilhan Omar and the DSA folks in AOC, they're different from Democrats. They're not the same.
Right.
We are not the same.
Democrats out of necessity, because there isn't really a viable third option yet.
Yeah. So we are not on the same team, and it is fascinating, a little infuriating, and mystifying when Democrats keep trying to claim that we're on the same team. Like, we'll play the same ball. Like, we know how to play this game too, knowing where we are in this space. But like, little by little, we're going to wrest power from you, I think. And we're actually seeing in the last 3 years hints of that happening. Assuming that Trump doesn't just like, take over fully.
Right. Assuming that like Trump doesn't just call the election off and install himself as the American dictator.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I saw Darrell Steinberg's name on that letter saying like, don't you dare come to our cities. It's like, you know what I saw? I saw fucking Nancy Pelosi doing the clap.
Right.
Or like
Werner Kente stole.
Oh, did you see her latest performance
right?
where she referred to the coronavirus as the Trump virus? Got him. Good one, Nancy.
Here's the question. If coronavirus had hit last, say, like 2 or 3 months earlier, let's say it had started in October and we were in shutdown mode by, end of 2019, do you think that Joe Biden is our nominee?
I have no idea.
That is a really good question. I've never thought of that before, but I also don't know.
I don't.
No. Who do you think would do it and why?
I don't think he's our nominee anymore because I think people become really disillusioned with Trump, but also I think given just the time dynamic, we probably will if you just shift everything up by 3 months, I think America is looking a little different at what, especially in some of the places that had their earlier primaries. I think they would be looking at the safe candidate as being something very different when we're talking about 30 million people being unemployed. When we're talking about, health insurance and things like that. I think candidates like Bernie and Warren gain a lot more steam from us actually having a pandemic that puts their ideas front and center for the importance in a way that's tangible to people's lives.
That's a really interesting point. So I mean, we're seeing right now what a country without universal health care looks and feels like in a pandemic.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, the only pushback I would give on that is that those ideas that Bernard and Elizabeth Warren were espousing are like objectively good for like 95 or 99% of us in this country anyway. Like they're in everybody's best interest, but they still get overturned all the time because the entire system is dedicated to like convincing people that they're impossible. And I don't think that would be different in the coronavirus, because if people voted in their best interests, like Joe Biden would not be the candidate, right?
You're right. I agree with you there. And I think that generally speaking, people don't always vote in their best interests. But I think what would seem a lot more appealing to people would be their ideas. Like they seem nice in the abstract, but when our unemployment rate is low and people are having insurance through their, and other ways, they're just like, this seems really pie in the sky. And then when everything you thought you knew about everything implodes, right? Like we've never in my lifetime had school shut down for 4 months.
Right.
We've never in my lifetime shut down. I mean, like we had leftover chicken wings because they like mass produced them for March Madness. Like we did not have March Madness this year. If you had told me on January 1st that there would be no March Madness, no NBA playoffs, right? Like none of those things would happen, I would have laughed you out of the room because they feel like that's happened through war, through, through natural disasters. Like the show goes on, right? And except this year, it's not. And so I think it is kind of shaping like what we think is possible in a way that's different, right? Like, I mean, I even talked about how like for Darrell Steinberg, the center shifted on him in a matter of weeks and he wasn't prepared for that. And he's now trying to scramble to figure out what he's going to do to get back in the center, because suddenly he became right wing in a way that he wasn't just a simple few weeks beforehand, right? So I'm just wondering, like, how all of this would have played if the timeline of when COVID actually took over had shifted to the end of last year instead of March of this year.
Yeah. I want to say two things. One, the sports portion of this was, it made me smile and remember that Babe Ruth was a big reason that Spanish flu took hold as bad as it did in our country. He did a victory tour around the country and drew these amazing large crowds. But
the show must go on.
Right. Well, I was just going to say to Flo's point, that Skylar, like, you're 100% right. And, these
100%.
big drug and insurance companies have been bastardizing the message on what is and is not in people's best interests for as long as we've had,
interests.
Yeah.
Right.
For as long as we've had interests, there's been somebody telling us to vote against them.
Yeah. But every idea has its moment, right? And I think we can just look back to 2 months ago, a month and a half ago, where the George Floyd moment made the entire country sort of recalibrate and say,
Right.
Even the folks that were being like, well, I don't know, that, I get it, but
it radicalized a lot of people.
Everybody was like, okay, whoa, right?
Yeah.
And I think that this could have potentially been a similar thing for something like universal health care. It creates something more tangible, right? And something, suddenly we're seeing our loved ones die, or not being allowed to see our loved ones die, and the trauma that we bring from that, right? Because they're in their hospital bed and we can never see them again. I think that there's no denying that, and if people start connecting the dots to why it is the way it is here in this country during this pandemic, I think that this can really change a lot of hearts and minds.
I hope you're right. I mean, we're going to find out, right? Because with just so people are like somewhat familiar with my deal, I know I joke about this at the end of the show or whatever, but I make my money in the service industry traditionally, doing large events. So the last time I worked was like the second week of March. And thankfully, like, I live in a state with a pretty like the unemployment here is okay. And then the federal has been generous so far on top of that. But that's about to change, right? And they didn't, so we got no rent control. I don't know what the actual unemployment number is, but it's like 20% or something, right? It's like pretty high. So like there's a lot of people like me, and I'm lucky because I'm in a situation where I can kind of hold out for a little while financially. But not everybody is. And like every month there's going to be more evictions coming. I mean, I'm also a classic example. So I had healthcare through the Hyatt, right? And they were actually really generous and just paid my healthcare for me up through June. But now because of the coronavirus, I, like many Americans, am a working class American who's out of work and doesn't have health insurance now in the middle of a pandemic. And it sucks, man. I got like a thing going on in my leg, and I just like kind of have to hope that it's not serious, And like, I guess this is kind of all to say. I don't know.
And then we have a co-host who's not able to be on the show and not able to get rid of her gallbladder right now, right?
I feel like I guess what I'm trying to say is that I hope you're right, because I think the moment is here, and I certainly am not trying to like throw myself a pity party. There are people who are in way worse positions than I'm in trying to navigate this thing.
I mean, like, just even in your position, but with kids, right?
Sure. Yeah, exactly. I had a point, and I was going somewhere with this, and now I talked myself out of it.
I think you made a great point.
Oh, so this is have I ever told you guys about my beer and Netflix theory of governing?
You have, yeah.
I heard this? I don't know.
So my theory is that as long as you put some beer in front of somebody and give them Netflix, they're going to be happy. They're not going to like get out in the street and like fuck all your shit up, right? Like you can do a lot to those people and exploit those people a lot. And as long as at the end of the day, they can have a couple cold beers and watch some Netflix, they're probably not going to be out in your front yard with torches and pitchforks. But like we're approaching rapidly a situation where like the Netflix subscriptions are coming to an end and the beer is running out. And that's true for a lot of people. And I mean, these guys must be doing that calculus in Washington, right? Being like, dude, how bad can we let things get for people before they come in here with torches and pitchforks and run us all out, right? They have to be doing that calculus. And I feel like they're doing it wrong, because if they just let people twist, in the middle of all of this stuff, like it won't work out for people. People will be in survival mode at a certain point.
It's interesting that you have that theory, because Tareen's whole theory is that part of what has allowed the George Floyd protests to happen is the cancellation of sports.
Yes, I have also
there was no way that nobody was able to be distracted by like, well, the game is on tonight, right?
Exactly.
Or like this other thing. And so it's interesting that yours is Netflix. Because I do think it is a welcome distraction for lots of people, even those who are still working. And it's a way to like kind of dull what's happening around you by being able to be at least entertained. And
right.
I do wonder like I mean, I'm always in these like, what would happen if, right? Like I'm always like, what happens if we win the Civil War, but then we like don't reunify the country? We just like free all the people who were enslaved, and then like our southern border problem is those damned Confederates who want our universal health care. Like I'm always curious, like what would happen if we just change something about the way things happen. And I'm with you, Skylar. I do think that there's the Netflix and beer, there's the way that sports not happening allowed people's attention, and people being out of work and at home, and all of these like factors that create an inflection point. And so the question is like, A, how far are they going to let things go? But also
right.
B, what's the next inflection point?
Right.
And do we see it coming? And is there a way to be able to strategize in advance around it? I mean, I think the next one is, of course, the like evictions.
Yeah.
Like when these housing protections run out,
right.
you're going to have millions of people.
People are still just as out of work as they were in March.
Correct.
Nothing has changed for a lot of these people.
Coming, and they're not
right.
doing.
Yeah.
And again, this isn't in DC even. This is our back door. This is here in Sacramento at that Capitol building 2 blocks away from where I live. Every day they go in and they don't do a thing about canceling rent. Right. So it's not just Republicans.
No, not at all. Not at all.
It's capitalists.
Yeah.
It's mostly not Republicans if we're talking about
over here.
Yeah, out here. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's one of the other things that's scary to me to kind of go back to where we started this episode about the DHS rollouts, is that that sort of feels to me like the Republicans sort of testing the waters of being like, well, what if we just let them all get evicted, kicked out into the streets with no health insurance in the middle of a thing, rather than like offer people unemployment. It looks like Trump is like, well, what if we just beefed up our security? So we're like ready for these guys when they have no options left but to like storm the castle,
Which again,
I don't
Democrats
know
and Republicans have been doing that since the 70s.
Yeah.
I don't know. It gets worse. People, do crime out of necessity, and they're like, oh, we better be tougher on this crime.
Right.
Yeah.
It's almost a natural progression.
I hope you're right, though. Like, I think the optimistic look is like, well, we basically, a lot of us kind of got like a little preview of what life with a UBI is like, right? Like, there are like things. I think it honestly kind of amazes me that Joe Biden hasn't come out with some kind of single payer plan at this point, because it's like could not be more obvious in the age of coronavirus that having your healthcare tied to your work is a stupid fucking idea, right? Mm-hmm. Any idiot can fucking see that right now. It's fucking obvious. So hopefully like one thing that comes out of this is that something like a single payer healthcare system doesn't sound as ridiculous to Republicans and fucking libs. Maybe that idea gets a little more steam. Hopefully.
By Republicans, you just mean workers who vote Republican?
Sure. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, who knows, man? Maybe at this time next year, we have like completely reshaped the police department. We have like good health care. We've got worker protections and eviction protections. And maybe it's not my nature to be super optimistic about this kind of shit, but like, it's definitely a possibility and like is the best case scenario for how we come through this thing.
I've been thinking back to last year here in Sacramento during, when District Attorney Anne Marie Schubert came out and assassinated Stefan Clark's character a year after he died, and she let the killer cops go free. And all of the legislative fights that were happening. I know, Flo, you were part of AB 392, which that one pushed back on police use of force. There was also SB 1421, which attacked the police officers' Bill of Rights, which we really need to do. We have to attack the police unions. That's our next step. And it was a great first step. So now we have increasing access to police misconduct records. I think back to that time, and I think about if we had offered up the arguments that we're actually having today, we would have been fucking laughed out of the room.
Oh, absolutely.
It's moving fast. And
can we also just point out that SB 1421, the city of Sacramento spent $624,000 on redaction, I guess, last year for an administrative technician, 3 administrative analysts, and 4 media production specialists. And
I want to be a redactionist. Holy shit.
And then this year they're planning on spending another, I guess it's over $800,000 on redactions again. So these redactions, while good, have cost us already like $1.5 million. And I'm just a little curious about why it's so expensive to redact all of these records and what we're actually getting from it.
It's wild. Yeah, well, and then also the Sac County Sheriff just refuses to give those records.
Correct.
Correct. The LA Times and the Sacramento Bee are currently suing them, and I would sue them too if I had money.
Like, can we just talk about quickly the irony of an agency that is colloquially referred to as law enforcement not following the laws? Like, can we just, I would like to unpack this for a moment, because most of the arguments that I hear in favor of law enforcement are that we are a system of laws, and if people break them and we don't hold them accountable, things will fall into pandemonium. And then here's an example of the people passing a law that law enforcement doesn't like, that asks them for some transparency, and their answer is, we just won't obey. Like, I don't ask for much, people. I do ask for a lot. But the main thing I ask for is just like an internally consistent philosophy in life. That's all I ask for. Like, if you're gonna go big, right? Like, I would expect the law and order people to be like, y'all, SB 1421 is the law. We got to get on board because that's what we do, right? But you don't get to cherry pick, because then if you're cherry picking, then how are you going to get on your high horse when I cherry pick which things I want? And when I say, well, I'm going to have a peaceful assembly that I didn't get a permit for, how is that any more wrong than you just completely saying I'm not going to obey the law at all? I don't get it. I just need somebody to explain that to me.
I will. As Sheriff Scott Jones' lawyer, I will bring about the Walt Whitman defense.
Okay.
Does he contradict himself? Very well. He contradicts himself. He is large. He contains multitudes. No, they're a fucking gang, Flo.
Yeah, 100%. So I was going to say, like, in my former employment, which I'm going to be vague about, I did have occasion to be in a room with large numbers of cops who were not on duty, who were there for like a social function. you are in that room for about 30 seconds, and it's fucking clear that these guys don't give a fuck about the rule of law. They don't care about.
They're a fucking gang.
They're a fucking gang, and it's about
killers.
power.
Yeah,
they don't like these guys. These guys break all the same more rules than most civilians do, and it's done with this like, well, yeah, who cares, whatever. Who's
impunity? Total impunity, right?
Yeah,
who's gonna stop me? Who's gonna check
stop
me?
me?
Is that?
It's
is
also
that
like stuff.
I am the law. That's what it is.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
Because
Skylar, you were mentioned. Oh, go Flo.
No, I was just listening. It's mind-boggling to me. That's all.
No, you're 100% right. I was gonna say, Skylar, you mentioned earlier that you're currently not working. What have you been doing with your time?
Well, Dave, I'll tell you. At the risk of kind of bringing the level of the show down a little bit. Honestly, one of the reasons why I'm in such, I feel like I'm luckier than some is that I have been able to fill up my time. I've been reading all these and listening to all these takes that are, and I've refined it. When I started out, I was listening to like some takes that were okay and some takes that were not so good or whatever. But because this is most of what I do now, I've been able to refine the process down to only the creme de la creme, the most perfect of the takes. But I know this sounds all good right now, but here's the rub is that I think I've read all the perfect takes. And one thing, if I'm going to get through fucking August, I'm going to need more takes. And I was hoping that maybe one of you could tell me where to go to get them.
Yeah. So I haven't told anybody about this at all. But I do know of such a place. I've been sort of hiding a cache of perfect takes for just a moment like this.
No, this is perfect for me. Where can I go to read these takes?
It's in a perfect place called voicesrivercity.com.
Incredible.
And we've been doing news and arts coverage over the last 3 years. We've done community essays. We've done some really fun transparency work with the Follow the Money project. And we've got a lot coming out there too in the works right now. Obviously, we've in our most recent iteration of Voices, we've been doing the podcast, but we are now at 76 episodes. And I got to tell you, that's over 76 hours of just perfect take after perfect take.
Incredible.
So,
this will last me through September even.
Oh yeah. The last few days, actually, we've seen a lot of traffic in older episodes. So it's cool to see people jumping back and looking at those. Even before it was, just you and me and then Shannon and then Flo joining, Anthony Sino did a crazy good fucking show in the first 23, 24 episodes. So go check those out. It was some real community oriented arts / news / activism, homegrown stuff. It was beautiful.
Yeah, his show was really good. I was a giant fan of it before I came on the show.
Before we ruined it, yeah.
Yeah, before we ruined all of Anthony's hard work.
But so yeah, go there. We're on all of the social mediums. Facebook Voices River City, Twitter at Voices River City, Instagram at Voices River City. It's always a fucking hoot over there, and I never know what audio clip you're going to throw on there.
Yeah.
And then we are on Patreon, patreon.com/Voices River City. Please do consider supporting us. We don't want to do commercials on this show, so don't force our hand.
Other than our White Claw commercials.
Yeah, well,
right.
White Claw.
But we're doing that for the endorsement that's coming in any day.
I'm trying to get that one to happen because
pro
we're
bono right now.
Them free. Come on, White Claw.
I tweet at them all the time.
Couple episodes where we don't have White Claw to see how you show them how their numbers will drop.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Honestly, if we all stopped drinking White Claws, it would be a big hit.
Just the four of us.
Yeah, I know. Really, exactly.
That could really end White Claw. Yeah.
We'll do it.
But yeah, you can do a pledge at Patreon as low as $5 a month, as high as $25 a month. And we've got some, if you do 25, we'll give you a mug and a t-shirt. And we've got some really cool t-shirts coming in. We're going to have a store coming up very soon. We're on YouTube if you want to watch our little faces while you're doing the dishes. Again, it's Voices River City on YouTube. And I don't know, it's just been a really special time. This was a different episode, which like I enjoyed. We got to like cover more freely outside of the state. I'm not sure we'll be doing this too regularly, but there was quite some catharsis to this conversation though.
Yeah.
Indeed.
I enjoyed it and I needed it. Honestly, like I have been kind of glued to Twitter trying to follow this thing in Portland, and like, I don't know, I am disturbed by it. And it does feel good to talk to you guys about it. I hope it feels good to listen to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to us, info@voicesrivercity.com or any of our social media, and just be like, hey, it does feel good for you to talk about this, or it does not. You know, let us know what's up.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, thank you to all of you who are out there doing direct action. Thank you to all of you who are out there, you know, trying to make a difference.
Absolutely.
Direct action works, and we're watching it happen in real time. I am on Twitter at YouKnowKempa, YOUKNOWKEMPA.
I'm Guillotine for You. That's Guillotine, the number 4, YOU.
And I am Flojaune. That's FLOJAUNE.
And Shannon is Shan N.D. Stevens.
That's correct.
That's right.
All right, who's going to do Shannon's part?
I'll do
just
it.
work
All right,
this
here
out
I go.
before.
Ready? You guys ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
All
Well,
right.
guys, thank you so much for listening to the show. We love you. We want you to please stay safe, stay sane,
Stay healthy.
And stay the fuck away from me.
much friendlier than when I do.
It is friendlier than
Yeah.
Skylar basically told us to fuck off.
Yeah, that's part of the joy of how I say it. It's like I'm telling you to fuck off, but I'm doing it nicely.
All right, guys. Well, we'll see you in a few days.
All right, bye.